Welcome to the 2026 Greenville Women Giving Grant Cycle, our 20th year of giving collectively. My name is Ashley Black, and I, along with Laura Corte, are vice chairs for the Grant Review Committee that is led by Blythe Hughes. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about the grant process. We look forward to receiving your application. Today's webinar will detail GWG's grant application criteria, discuss the grant process, review required forms, and help you assess how to position your application for success. Since 2006, Greenville Women Giving has awarded more than $9 million in 159 grants to over 90 organizations across our community. Our mission is simple but powerful: to fund high-impact grants that create meaningful, lasting change right here in Greenville County. Looking ahead to 2026, we expect to have about $500,000 available in grant funds and anticipate receiving 75 to 80 applications. Typically, 6 to 8 grants are funded each year, roughly 10% of those who apply. Last year, with a larger number of applications, that percentage dropped slightly, with only about 8% receiving funding. That's why it's so important to understand the grant criteria and learn how to navigate the process. GWG grant proposals fall into 5 focus areas: arts, education, environment, health, and human services. When applying, select the area that best fits your request, though GWG will make the final determination. Choosing the right category is important. Base your choice on the specifics of your proposal, not just your organization's mission, as some grants could fit more than one area. For example, a prenatal support organization might assume health, but if the request funds infant CPR classes, education could be a better fit. Review the category definitions and examples in GWG's online instructions and consider your success metrics. Are you measuring health outcomes or the number of course graduates? Your outcomes help determine the best category. Once you've identified the category, make sure your proposal details a tight, cohesive program. Your activities should clearly lead to the outcomes you've listed, and your evaluation indicators should measure the success of those activities. At least one grant is awarded per focus area, with the remaining funds distributed in rank order based on GWG member votes. Organizations are eligible for funding as long as they meet GWG guidelines and are open to all who seek services, without regard to restricted affiliations. An example might be an organization that requests a grant but restricts its services to a specific religious affiliation. That request would not be eligible for funding. Organizations can generally submit one grant each year. If your organization receives funding for a grant, it cannot apply again until the funded grant has officially closed. GWG guidelines and application instructions outline more detailed information on timing for new applications. For 2026, grant awards will range from $50,000 to $100,000. Requests below or above this range are disqualified, with no option to amend. This is a mistake you definitely want to avoid. When applying, you'll identify whether your request is for a new or expanding program, general operating support, continuation of an existing program, or capital improvements. All requests must clearly explain why funds are needed, the expected impact, and the steps and timeline to achieve measurable, sustainable results. For example, if applying for general operating support, you must show what will be achieved with the funding. If your request includes rent, utilities, or salaries, describe the community impact, the number of clients served, and plans for sustaining services beyond the grant. Grant terms are either 1 year or 2 years. Requests that can be completed and spent within 12 months, like equipment purchases or certain program expansions, should be submitted as 1-year grants. Programs or building needs requiring more time should be submitted as 2-year grants. GWG funds are expected to be spent within the designated time frame. If your project will take longer than 2 years, it may not yet be ready for GWG funding. Successful applications address each of our funding priorities. Please be sure your proposal aligns with one of GWG's 5 focus areas, explains why funds are needed, and defines the potential for significant community impact. It is also important to demonstrate your ability to complete the project, and if applicable, sustain the project beyond initial GWG funding. In both areas, community partnerships and collaborations play a key role. Certain requests are immediately disqualified, including contributions to existing endowments, re-grants, or scholarships, as well as funding for staff travel or meals. For example, a $100,000 proposal that includes $2,500 for staff to attend a conference would be disqualified. Now let's turn our attention to who reviews applications. The Grant Review Committee consists of roughly 70 women who evaluate the applications, determine which applicants warrant site visits, and then identify the top-ranked grants that qualify for committee presentation. Our committee members spend hours reviewing grant requests, and we are very appreciative of the time you put in developing them. Here's the timeline for the next grant cycle. All dates are also listed on the GWG website. Applications open online on January 2nd and are due January 23rd at 5 p.m. Please do not wait until the last minute in case you have any technical issues. Late submissions cannot be accepted. You will also want to be sure your organization can be available between February 10th through March 6th for site visits. During these visits, the review team will learn firsthand about your operations and needs and ask important follow-up questions about your budget, activities, and evaluation indicators. Okay, a quick overview. By mid-February, we select which grants move forward to a site visit. By early March, site visits are complete and grants moving forward are identified. From mid-March to mid-April, GWG members review the grants and vote. By April 15th, grants are selected for the final ballot. In May, grant recipients are notified, videos are made for the award ceremony, and grants are awarded at the annual meeting on May 19th. Last year, we received 97 grant applications. Of those, 91 were eligible. Approximately 50 site visits were conducted, 28 grants were considered for final review, 15 grants appeared on the ballot, and 7 grants were funded. There is also a link on the GWG website to our application interest form. This form is intended for internal grant review committee use only. It is not a commitment or letter of intent to apply. If your organization has decided to submit an application, it is very helpful for us to receive for planning purposes. It can be submitted through January 10th. If your organization has not decided to apply by the 10th, that's fine. This form is not required, and it is not used in the application review process. When you are ready to begin designing your grant, you will access the grant portal on the Greenville Women Giving website. It is found under the grants section on the right. There you will find the information about last year's awards, the current grant guidelines, a link to the GWG grant application, and the forms and documentation that support the application. You will also find an FAQ section that covers additional details about the application and the process. Once you click the link to the grant application, you will be able to log in and create a profile. You will also be asked to assign a coordinator for your organization. Your coordinator has two important responsibilities during the grant process. First, the site visit. If selected for a visit, the coordinator will work with GWG members to schedule the meeting promptly. Site visits will be conducted between February 10th and March 6th, so please be prepared to provide times for the grant review team to come on site to learn more about your organization and your grant request. This meeting is an important opportunity for the review team to learn more about your request and for you to provide greater detail about your proposal. Site visits typically last an hour, and the review team will come prepared with questions about your activities, your budget, and the indicators you will use to evaluate your impact. During the visit, you should demonstrate both the community need and the impact your proposal will have. Please be prepared to describe exactly how GWG funds will be used. Be sure to focus on the proposal and not on your organization more broadly. Tours are appreciated as long as they tie specifically to your request and not to other programs that you provide. For example, if you're interested in building a new classroom, a tour might show where the new classroom will be built and may highlight current classroom space to show that current space isn't adequate. It would not, however, be advisable to tour the entire complex. Now to the ballot showcase. If your organization is on the ballot, it's showtime. All 500 GWG members are invited to attend this showcase. Each organization will set up a booth and have representatives for members to talk with during a reception hour. Then members will hear about your organization's needs and plans directly from you before they cast their vote. A representative from your organization will give a brief 2-minute overview of your grant request. This is an important moment to pitch your program and show how it directly addresses a need and the impact it will have. A few tips and reminders before we get into the main part of the grant application. When you create your account, you'll need to identify both your grant application coordinator and your executive director. If your organization did not apply last year, you'll need to create a new account profile to begin. You can save your work and return later in every section, but be sure to review your application in its entirety before hitting submit. Now, let's dive into the details. Your grant title is very important. Throughout the review process, your proposal will be referred to by its title. It will also appear on the ballot exactly as written. There is a strict 6-word limit. If your title is longer than 6 words, it will be shortened after submission. Remember, you do not need to include your organization's name. That will appear elsewhere in the materials. The goal here is to create a powerful, memorable title that clearly reflects how GWG funds will be used. Think of something concise and meaningful, a title people can easily connect with and remember. In the application, you'll complete 6 narrative sections that relate to your organization and proposal. Each section has a character limit rather than a word limit. And yes, periods and spaces count. A character counter will display in the application so you can track your length and make revisions as needed. Be sure to review the online application instructions carefully. They provide guidance on what to include in each section. The grant details and planned outcomes sections are especially important. During the initial review, team members focus on what you are requesting and what you hope to achieve. Be clear about why you are applying, what need you're addressing, and how your proposal will make a community impact. Finally, outline specific, measurable outcomes that show what success will look like. The narrative you provide is printed and reviewed by the grant committee. It's the foundation for deciding which proposals move forward in the process. Your proposal should be understandable, relevant, realistic, fiscally responsible, and attainable. Reviewers should easily see how your plan fits your mission and how the funds will be used responsibly. Your measurement criteria should be accountable and directly aligned with your planned activities, showing exactly how success will be tracked. Finally, describe your potential impact in clear, specific terms. It should be meaningful, measurable, and observable, with results that are timely and relevant to the community's needs. The grant evaluation form demonstrates the depth of your planning and helps us understand your proposed timeline and expected outcomes. This allows us to assess how well your proposal is designed and how achievable your goals are. In the application narrative, you will list 3 planned outcomes. These should be copied into the first column of the form, along with the benefits or changes you hope to achieve with GWG funding. The second column is for action steps, the specific activities you will take to accomplish each outcome. The third column is your timeline, with concrete dates for each step. Be sure all dates fall within the 1-year or 2-year grant period. And the final column is for performance indicators, showing how you will measure success. These metrics should be specific, measurable, and achievable. For example, if you request a 1-year grant to expand a program by adding a classroom and hiring a new teacher, in your planned outcomes column, you could list add a classroom, hire a teacher, enroll 20 additional students. In the action steps column, you could list reconfigure space for the classroom, prepare and post the job description, hire and train the teacher, advertise for new students, enroll 20 additional students, and analyze impact. Then, in the timeline column, you could include specific dates for each of those activities. For example, you could note the date when the job description would be ready to be circulated, the date that new students would be enrolled, and the date the new teacher would be hired. 1-year grants should run from May 14th, 2026, when funding begins, through June 30th of 2027. 2-year grants should outline steps for each year. Then in your final column, the performance indicators, you could list that the classroom would be ready for the program by September 1st, the teacher hired by September 1st, 20 students enrolled. Your evaluation might show that 75% of students improved educational outcomes as measured by standardized test scores, and 100% of families reported reduced stress as measured by pre- and post-course survey. GWG will track your progress throughout the grant period to ensure that you meet your timeline and achieve the outcomes outlined in this form. This year, we've added a new feature to the grant application process, the ability to submit your grant evaluation form for feedback before final submission. If your nonprofit would like guidance, the Grants Assessment Committee is available to review your form. Feedback will focus specifically on your evaluation criteria and planned outcomes. Importantly, the committee members providing feedback do not influence grant review or voting decisions. Their role is to offer guidance based on experience, evaluating success measures and outcomes from previous grant awards. Timing is important. The committee will provide feedback from January 2nd through January 16th of 2026. To give yourself time to make any revisions, be sure to request feedback before the deadline. To request feedback, send an email to greenvillewomengiving@gmail.com. You will be contacted within 3 business days to schedule a consultation. You'll then receive an email from a committee member, which will allow you to share a written copy of your grant evaluation form ahead of a phone consultation to review outcomes, success indicators, and/or potential pitfalls. The second required form is the grant budget template. This form helps us understand the financial details of your request. The application instructions now provide more guidance, and all applicants should review them carefully. The focus of this form is your requested grant rather than your organization's annual budget. The form has 3 sections. The first is the overall budget. In this section, you will list the total costs of your proposed project. For example, if you are adding a classroom, you might include the new teacher's salary, construction costs, furniture, books, and technology. The total here may exceed the amount you are requesting from GWG. This shows the scope of your project. In the second section, you have funding sources. Outline how you will cover all costs to complete the project in this section. The top line is always the amount requested from GWG. Include other sources of funding here as well, whether requested, received, or committed. This way we can assess the likelihood of the project being completed. And in the third section, you have the use of GWG funds. Here, you will detail exactly how GWG funds will be spent. Using the classroom example, your $50,000 request might cover desks, laptops, bookcases, and other materials. The total in this section should match the GWG request in the middle section and at the start of your application. For 2-year grants, provide a separate breakdown for each year showing how funds will be used. You may submit separate forms for each year if you prefer. There are additional documents you will need to upload to support your application. Some of these are required forms, while others are supplemental materials that help the grant review team understand your proposal more fully. Be sure to submit all required forms with your application to avoid follow-up requests or any elimination. Supporting materials such as photos, maps, construction plans, renderings, quotes, estimates, and contracts are also very helpful. They give the review team a clear picture of your project and strengthen your grant request. Once you've completed your application, take a final moment to review everything before submitting. Check for a confirmation email from GWG. This ensures that we have received your application. If you do not receive an email, we likely do not have all of your work. This is why it's important not to wait until the last minute to submit. Technical issues can arise, and there will be no one available to assist late on the deadline day. All applications must be received by 5 p.m. on the deadline date. GWG has a hard deadline, and unfortunately, no exceptions can be made. So what happens if your grant is selected for funding? First, you will sign a contract and participate in creating a short video to be shown at our annual meeting and awards ceremony in May, which you will attend. After receiving your grant funds, you will then meet with a member of the GWG Grant Assessment Committee. They will guide you through completing your GWG requirements by the agreed upon date, ensuring your project stays on track. So your work begins by logging into the grants portal. There you will find additional instructions and guidelines to help answer your questions. If you need additional clarification, you can email greenvillewomengiving@gmail.com. Melanie Dixon will forward your questions to the committee. We hope today has been useful. and look forward to your submission. As our 3 taglines note, our mission is to give collectively, grant strategically, and grow a greater Greenville.